Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and medi-spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Welcome. Access to Democracy returns. Alan Miller with you as usual. And before I get into introducing our first-time guest, I have to explain that in 23 years, I have never worked in studio with a hat on. But I think I have to explain that I got into a knife fight with a dermatologist yesterday, and I lost. Actually, Dr. Charles Crutchfield, who happens to be one of our benefactors, is also a great dermatologist and spent a good part of the day yesterday doing some biopsies on my head, etc. So I apologize for the look because I look like somebody that just got off the boat from Europe, and that's the way it is. I want to say welcome to Carol Giuliani. Carol's here for the first time, and she has a really unique business. She's had a really unique life, which we'll get into in a few moments, but Senior Travel Companion Services. And why don't you tell people what that is?
Thanks, and thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Well, what I do is customized trip planning and travel escort for individual seniors and couples. So basically, I started a business 6 years ago when I saw the need to be able to help transport seniors to destinations that they can't get to on their own because of medical problems, physical and mental disabilities, things like that. So it's a service where I'm not taking people in a group, but I'm taking 1 or 2 people, figuring out a trip, getting them to the airport, flying with them on the plane, and actually getting them to their final destination for a lot of relocations, people that move back to be with their families, a lot of weddings, and a few vacations along the way too. Just whatever they need to get someplace and have a more interesting and beneficial lifestyle.
And as you were telling me before we went on air, one of your most interesting trips was a funeral that you recently took somebody to.
Right. I took a lady to a funeral in Missouri, and this is a driving trip. Most of the trips I do are flights, but she was more comfortable with that. And she had some serious mental health and physical disabilities. And once I got her down to the Missouri wedding, or funeral site, excuse me, I met the pastor and sat with him as he interviewed her, and then put together a program. And the next day around this cornfield was this little cemetery, and her mother's ashes were being buried, and he did a beautiful eulogy. And she was there with her cousin, and she decided she wanted to sing in the garden a cappella, and she was this little bitty lady, and she just blew it out into the cornfields and the cemetery, and it was amazing. It just gave me chills. It was great.
Now you say you go with people. Do you sometimes stay with them for the length of their vacation, which maybe is a vacation for you also, I don't know.
It's always their vacation. They're the number one person. So, but I do go on those vacations and to weddings. So if there's somebody that wants to go on a trip and has some physical disabilities, I will make sure that I have a handicap accessible van. I will stay in the room with them if they need me to do that. For the gentlemen, if I take them on a vacation, they'll be in an adjacent room in a room next door with a monitor so I can listen in on them. People with dementia, I use a door alarm if that's the situation. But I will stay with them for the whole trip, and if they have any incidents in the middle of the night, I will be able to take care of them.
So this has to be fascinating. Now, you've been doing this for 6, 7 years now.
Yeah, about 6 years, a little less.
Not how you started out, however.
No. I started out as a lawyer, and then from there became a guardian and conservator. So my father had had a stroke when he was 56, and I had to take over his health care. So for 20, was it 30 years, 28 years, something like that, I managed his health care. And once I had that education, I got trained by the Volunteers of America to become a guardian and conservator. So I was managing the health decisions and the financial decisions for strangers that didn't have family or family that couldn't or wouldn't do it. So that got me involved in knowing all types of care for seniors and spending a lot of time with them and knowing how to do everything for them, from getting their cats shaved to burying them in the veteran cemetery.
So stepping back, you went to law school.
Right.
You met somebody in law school who's still involved in your life.
Yep.
And who would that be?
My husband. Yeah.
And he's a practicing lawyer?
He is, yes.
Okay. But from law school, you stepped into securities law?
Securities, and I did some insurance defense, and I was a federal law clerk for a couple of years in Duluth. So I did perform, pay back my student loans and practice law for quite a while, for about 10 years.
And then Volunteers of America came along.
Right. Once I found out that I needed to take care of my father, I wanted to get more education, so I took their training program. And over the 20-some years that I worked as a guardian conservator, I probably had 100 years worth of clients that I managed their health and financial decisions for.
And you're still licensed as a conservator, is that correct?
No, I'm not. There's not really licensing for that, but I've decided to phase out of that over the years so that I could concentrate on this travel business.
And 6, 7 years ago, you saw the need for this type of travel.
Right. When I was working with the guardian conservator clients, I would be responsible for them for 12 years or more. And my kids, my 3 sons, were growing up and going to college, and I wanted to take a little more of a easier path and do something different. And I'm very savvy about travel. I've done a lot of travel my whole life. So I decided to put my knowledge of how to take care of seniors and manage their programs and their lives to some extent with my travel experience and my need to get someplace.
Now, this is a very unique business. And you mentioned, before we get into that, you have 3 sons, and where are they today?
One in medical school in Iowa, one in law school in Arizona, one in law school at William Mitchell, my alma mater.
So we'll really run the gamut of professions here.
Right.
Okay. Now, how do people get in touch with you? How do they know that you exist?
Well, my business is named Senior Travel Companion Services, and I thought that's a long, boring name, but it really describes what I do. So many people find me just by Googling Senior Travel Companion, and I pop up at the top of Google, which is great. And then because I've been in the industry and I know a lot of people in home health care, in move management, in all aspects of the senior care industry, they know what I'm doing. And I've done a little bit of marketing with them sometimes and reached out to some of those folks and said, if you need somebody and you want them to move, if you want to have somebody move into your facility and they can't do it from out of state by themselves, just call me and I'll make it happen.
Now, this probably has taken you to some very interesting places. For instance, where?
One of my longest trips was picking up a couple from Bangladesh and moving them to Tampa. That was a few years ago. I took a gentleman to Scotland on a vacation for a couple of weeks, and that was fun for both of us. Right before the pandemic, I went to Ecuador with a lady who was disabled, and I was able to take her whitewater rafting down the Apurimac River in Ecuador, and they strapped her wheelchair onto the raft, and we had the most fantastic afternoon. Gave her an oar, and she was out there on the water like that.
And there you were, White River rafting.
Right, in a fabulous place, and seeing the Galapagos Islands. So
A first for you, I take it.
yes,
Yes.
She wanted to see flora and fauna, and I will customize a trip and make sure that everything is safe and comfortable with her to the extent possible with travel, because travel is a business, is a opportunity that can have some unexpected events. Some of them are great, like being able to hook a nice marlin in Hawaii, and some of them are not so great when there's a flight delay or mechanical failure and you have to go through Atlanta for something. But
Or during COVID, that had to impede your business a lot.
I had to cancel several trips after the Ecuador and Hawaii trip. I had a trip to Aruba, and that got canceled, and then 2 more. But then I started picking up more trips to the extent that I actually, last year during COVID, did 12 trips and 60 flights. So
Really?
I did, yes. I talked to my family and I said, I want to continue doing this and I'll take every precaution available. And they said, go ahead. And the airports were empty, the planes were half empty, and it was actually easier and more relaxing than it is now.
Now, you said that people find you pretty much online. Do you do any other advertising other than that, or is that it?
I have a pretty small marketing budget, so that's pretty much it. Just some word of mouth with other people in the industry. Sometimes I'll do, excuse me, a podcast or a magazine article or something like that.
Now, one of the things that you must run into that is really problem solving on your part is, how do you plan these trips?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? The person calls you and says, I want to take my mother, my father, thus and such, or go on a vacation, thus and such. How do you take it from there?
Right. Well, I have some paperwork, so I make up a contract and we figure out what the needs are for that person. And I have a questionnaire that's pretty detailed to make sure that I know what's going on. Lots and lots of communication and conversation up front.
Do you meet with the family also, or the individual?
If I can, yes. I did some Zoom meetings like that. And before every trip, if humanly possible, I'll get together with the individual and the family the night before to make sure we've got everything lined up. With COVID, it was a little trickier because sometimes I had to just pick them up outside of the facility and drive them to the airport and get them to where they needed to go. But otherwise, I've just really gotten it kind of down to an art where I know the best websites to get rental cars. I know what hotels are going to be good for this individual. I can figure out the flights, and because I have status on Delta and United, I can get some good deals on the flights.
So you do all this ahead of time?
Yeah, I do all the logistics and I put together a budget, and then if they approve the budget and they give me the money for the expenses, then I book the tickets and take them on the trip. And when the trip's all over, I give them an accounting with all the receipts so that they see this is how the money is spent.
Well, I guess your background in securities and that type of law certainly are helpful in that regard.
It has been helpful. It has helped me at least have the guts, I guess, to start a business like this and know what the liabilities are and the risks and everything else.
And it certainly did take guts to go into this blind, so to speak, and just put yourself out there.
Right, right. It was a little scary to get started, but I had done so much travel and I knew seniors so well, it was also comfortable for me.
And cost-wise, how does that work with people? Not everybody can afford an expensive trip, but everybody wants to take one. So if they want to hire you, what do they do?
That's true. And I try to work with people as much as possible, just within their budgets. So we'll talk about that. A lot of times I can get a good deal on flights and transportation. I just flew to LA 2 weeks ago and it was $42 to get there on a Sun Country flight, easy enough. So I'll keep the cost
So
down.
it's $42 plus 42 for the person you're flying with.
Well, it was just 42 for me to get to LA. And then from LA, I flew with this lady to go to her family to meet up with them in Lexington, Kentucky. So that was a bit more, and then I have to fly home from there. So those are all covered, and some ground transportation. But the cost depends on where the travel is. If it's wintertime in Minnesota and it's a summer or sunshine vacation, I'll probably give a little bit of a better deal. And if there's a lot of medical needs, if there's extra connections, I'll try to get direct flights in the morning because that works best with seniors, especially those with dementia. So I'll try to arrange everything that's the most safe, comfortable, direct, and economical trip there is for that person to accommodate their disabilities.
And what does that cost the individual who first calls to hire you?
Well, usually I charge a little bit of money up front, $100 to $300 to set it up. And then after that, depends on if it's a big vacation. So the vacations are very different from the weddings, from the relocations. So the relocations start generally at about $1,000 or something like that. And it goes up from, depending on if I'm going Albany to Portland or if I'm just going to Chicago and back or something like that.
So that this requires, in many instances, using 2 or 3 different airlines.
Sure. I've been on all of them. And I prefer Delta because I can use, being here in Minnesota, it's the hub. And I tend to get good service from them because of my status of having flown 125,000 miles or something like that. But whatever is available and whatever is cost effective for them, it's their vacation. If they want to stay in a first class hotel and want to fly first class on the flights, I'm fine with that. Sometimes I'll end up sleeping in the individual's home the night before a trip, or I've been in everything I say from the Fontainebleau to a FEMA trailer. So I'll just accommodate them.
And well, that's got to be very interesting, challenging, certainly. What has been your best experience?
I think one of my first experiences was taking this very lovely lady to New York, and she really didn't want to go. And sometimes people don't because they don't feel like they need somebody to go along with them. So she was a little bit reluctant to go to New York for a week, but that was her stomping ground when she was younger, and she just wanted to have the experience.
So who set that up?
Her daughter. A lot of times the family members will be the ones that call me and say, my mom wants to come, my grandma wants to come to my wedding, and all the wedding people and parents are going to be involved, so we need to get somebody else to take care of grandma so she can be there, get dressed, and then be done with the wedding after the cake. So anyway, that's what happens a lot. But this one trip was a vacation to New York, and the lady was pretty reluctant, but once she got to know me a little bit, and we were sharing a loft in Manhattan, she said, well, I think it might be kind of fun if we go to a Broadway play, and how about if we go to a Korean spa while we're at it? And so she had some ideas of what she wanted to do, and so I got those things put together, and it was a real fun vacation. Even just some of the relocations that I've done. Recently, I took a woman from Cleveland to Denver, and I got there a day early so I could go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on my own. So if I could string together...
Which is a fascinating place.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Oh, yes.
Fabulous. Yeah. And I got to go to Niagara Falls this summer. After I dropped off somebody in Rochester, I rented a car on my own and took an extra couple of days at my own expense to go and see Niagara Falls. So I will try to turn the trips into something fun if I have an opportunity.
Now, obviously, the people are paying not only for their relative or themselves, but they also have to pay for you and your lodging and your air travel, etc. So this could become very expensive in some cases.
Right, and there are people that do trips like I plan that are with medical personnel. There's the Flying Angels out of Philadelphia, a very good outfit. But they have nurses, and they will do sedation and IVs and first-class hotels and first-class seats. And I act more as an in-between person from the family member and in between that and the medical personnel. So I'll try to come in with something pretty reasonable, and I can be pretty flexible too sometimes, depending on what the situation is. But there are trips that turn out to be real big deals and can take, a lot of planning and a lot of work. So I just kind of book these things accordingly. And I just want to make sure that these people are able to do the trips, to be with family, especially after this COVID nightmare, and to experience something in their lives that's pleasant, that they can talk about, that keeps their minds active and physically active. There's just so many benefits of travel. And these reunions that I have when I put together the people that I'm flying with their family members have been just amazing.
And it's got to be gratifying to you as well.
Oh, totally. Mm-hmm.
Now, we talked about one of your best trips. What about your worst trips?
Okay, I did take a lady from Chicago to Vermont on a train one time, and she didn't want to fly on a plane because of the turbulence. But the train isn't really steady, so that was pretty uncomfortable for her. I've had a couple of cases, most recently in the last couple of years, where the family and the staff said that the client would be able to have transfer with minimal help, meaning they could get from a wheelchair to a car, and holding on to me or something. But they were able to do that kind of stuff. But physically, they deteriorated in the last year or so. So they really were more like dead weight than people that could actually move around. So those can be tricky situations.
And that's really becoming very burdensome for you also.
It's an issue when I can't get straight answers and I can't meet the people the night before. And for those kinds of trips, then the next one I might meet a really wonderful gal who's in really pretty good shape, just has some anxiety and needs to have somebody comfort her on the way, and it's pleasant conversation and all of that. So it all evens out in my mind.
Mostly women, would you say, traveling with you, or do you have equality in terms of numbers of men, numbers of women?
No, it's mostly women, just because they're the ones that outlive their husbands. And there's a lot of widows in the southern states that are now moving back to their families because they've hit their later years and they're having some issues. And the families want them close by where they can keep an eye on them, which I heartily applaud, because I used to visit my dad all the time in the nursing home. And the more care you have and concern by family members, I think the better care you get from the staff. So I highly encourage that. But yeah, it's.
Have you made some good friends along the way?
I have a few. I have a gentleman from the Shalom home who calls me on a regular basis, and I had one gentleman I took on 3 trips, 2 to New Orleans, because he just wanted to party till his money was gone. And he passed away, but we had some interesting adventures on that, I'll tell you. So a lot of folks, it's just a one-time deal. This is the last time they'll ever fly to catch up with their families in Albany or wherever they need to go. And I understand that. But the people that I work with and the families are generally very trusting and careful and really appreciate my service, because for whatever reason, they can't do it. And a lot of times there's just not family.
And knowing that you're going to comfort their loved one, or spend time with their loved one and be there in case of an emergency where you're qualified to handle that emergency.
Right. I had a couple from Albany to Portland, and we got to the airport at 5:30 for a flight, and all of a sudden they said, well, your connection in Detroit isn't going to happen because we're delayed, so we're going to send you to Atlanta where you'll spend 2 or 3 hours, and then we'll take you to Salt Lake City for another several hours and get you in about supper time. And I said, this isn't going to work, because this gentleman has got moderate dementia and needs to be in a facility for a memory care assessment and stay there that night. So I had to totally dump their first class Delta tickets and get them on a Southwest flight, where I flew them to Denver with just a brief stop without an exit, and then on to Portland and get them in 3 or 4 hours late. And then from there I had to work on getting their luggage to them because there wasn't reciprocity, and getting the Delta refunds.
So you had to do all that jockeying around,
right,
which certainly is problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, Delta kept saying, oh, we'll give you some travel credit. And I said, this is their last flight. So they ended up giving them a bunch of Crate and Barrel gift cards. So you got to be kind of tenacious and have some different ways of figuring things out.
I understand you had a very interesting trip with a vegetarian who wanted to go to India.
Yeah, no, Well, the vegetarian wanted to go to Ecuador.
Oh, Ecuador.
Yeah, that was the excellent one with the whitewater rafting. And I did have another trip where I took a vegetarian to Cancun for her grandson's wedding. Um, that was kind of fun, but I didn't realize when I sat down and loaded my plate with the buffet bacon and eggs that was going to be a situation. So I am very sensitive about that. And once I was told that was something I should be doing, I will certainly work around folks and make sure that everything I do is comfortable for them.
Was there a trip to India also?
No. I did do a trip to Dubai, and I did take this couple from Bangladesh through Dubai to Tampa. But no, I'd love to go on a trip to India, but right now they're a little bit in trouble. So.
And what about customs in all these places as you're getting on and off the planes? Do you find that it's troublesome when you're with somebody who's incapacitated to some degree, and where you have to go through customs and they have to go through customs and all?
Yeah.
Does that create a problem?
Well, that's the thing about customs, or mostly I do TSA. I get them through TSA, and customs is just another step after that if you're taking them overseas. So customs doesn't seem to be any worse. They actually are maybe a little bit better than just getting folks through TSA. And that's where I run into quite a bit of problems, and that's why I'm very active in a couple of big programs to make that program easier.
And what would that be?
The first one is I joined a volunteer group called the Dementia Friendly Airport Working Group a couple of years ago, ran by Sarah Barcel, who found that there was a need for the airports just to be better with people going through the airports. And she has created this kind of burgeoning volunteer business with many people from different states to get the airports to have more quiet places for seniors. And we're training the TSA now to be more positive and more patient with people that come through the airports, and to take a little bit more time, because folks with dementia have a lot of trouble with that. And some of the things we're trying to teach them and educate them through a national shift brief and otherwise.
Some of them has to be suspicious of you also, as you suddenly come into their life and are suddenly traveling with them.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I get to know them real well and their families real well, and meet them the night before. So they're not so much suspicious. Most of them seem to be just thankful, honestly, and I'll find ways to make them calm, and I will take them to use the companion care bathrooms and make sure that I'm with them at all steps and answer all their questions.
And what about somebody who's on oxygen?
Yep, I've done oxygen, ostomy bags, catheter bags, diabetic testing, all of that stuff. Now that would be something that a family member could do once they learn how to do it. So I can learn how to do those things. I'll do it for those folks.
An incredible business, very interesting, very innovative. And we've been talking with Carol Giuliani, who is the proprietor of Senior Travel Companion Services, and among her many credits in terms of business and otherwise. Any final thoughts as we're just about to sign off to people who have somebody who's disabled and would like to see them comfortable?
Yeah, I just think there's a couple of things that people should encourage people, their seniors, to go on these trips. Having a little bit of risk in your life, it's going to be a little bit risky, but there's a lot of things you can have problems with at home. So just getting out and having these experiences and having something to talk about is so life enriching that I encourage people to volunteer to make that happen, to get it to
Carol,
happen.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much.
I really appreciate it.
I appreciate being on. Thank you.